So if you joined me last week, you remember we took a look at Quake 3, a multiplayer-focused shooting game that took the series in a new direction, after two single-player-focused predecessors before it. Now we're looking at Unreal Tournament, which ended up literally doing the same thing, being a multiplayer-orientated game, following in the footsteps of the prior game Unreal, which had a very strong and polished campaign. Unreal was an engaging shooter, throwing you on a mysterious alien planet as you search for answers to your whereabouts, with amazing level design and intelligent enemy AI. It's arguably one of the best games released in 1998 and also hands down one of the best FPS games of all time. So let's jump 12 months later and we've got the release of Unreal Tournament, and if you're hoping for a brand spanking new single player experience on the same kind of level as Unreal, well, you're going to be pretty disappointed. Unreal Tournament was released in late 1999, with console ports released through the year 2000 and 2001, and despite being focused more on the multiplayer experience, it was still a great game, and ended up being one of the best FPS games of the year. Unreal Tournament does at least follow on somewhat from the events of the prior games, focusing around the humans and the Scarge, taking place decades after war initially broke out. The Leandria Mining Corporation have invented the tournaments, which is an event where competitors fight amongst one another as a sort of futuristic gladiatorial spectacle. Obviously you're playing the part of one of these competitors, which you're free to customize in appearance and voice. It's a little bit limited compared to the few dozen player models you could select in Quake 3, but there's enough options here to make it somewhat unique. From there you can hop into the single player mode, which is a series of preset matches against bots of different skill levels in modes like Deathmatch, Capture the Flag, Domination, Team Deathmatch and Assault. Anyone who played Bot Match in Unreal 1 will instantly recognise Unreal Tournament's gameplay, and they've even brought over a few of the old maps, albeit with a heavy facelift. I think everyone knows what Deathmatch is. It's where you just run around and kill everyone else, or at least the opposing team. Capture the Flag is again pretty self-explanatory, and Domination is another well-known mode where you hold control points across the map to reach the score limit.
Control point secure.
Assault is probably the most unique, where you've got a series of objectives to complete for each map and a time limit. After you've attacked, you then play around defending, and some of these maps are really creative. It's really kind of staggering how many maps are on offer in this game across all of the game modes, and it can take a fair bit of time trying to learn the layouts for each of them, especially in modes like Capture the Flag and Domination. Some maps are gigantic, allowing up to 16 players, whereas others recommend only 3 to 4 players maximum. Outside of the single player mode, you can create practice sessions within all of these game modes, modifying the parameters however you wish. From the score and time limit, the maps themselves, the amount of bots and their skill level, through to the mutator list. Mutators are small attributes which can have adverse effects on a match, like replacing the default melee weapon with a chainsaw, lowering gravity, increasing jump height, or allowing one-hit kills with every weapon. There's just an infinite amount of possibilities here, and it's where I spent most of my time with this game when I first bought it. I'd set up these never-ending Capture the Flag matches on larger maps like Facing Worlds or Lava Giant, removing the score limit, throwing in the maximum amount of bots, and just adding in a stupid amount of mutators to make the gameplay as ludicrous as possible. It was fun back then, and it's still fun to this day, and I think if you go in and play Unreal Tournament and don't bugger around with these settings, then you're not playing the game right. One thing I feel I have to mention when talking about Unreal Tournament is the soundtrack, which is just incredible and hands down one of the best FPS soundtracks of all time. Composed by the same guys who've worked on Unreal 1 and Deus Ex, they're just some really catchy tunes that you will quickly come to love the more you play the game. My favourite is the music that plays on the Deck 16 maps, something they would later also remix for Unreal Tournament 2004. It's just awesome. On the other side of the presentation, you've got the visuals, which weren't all that flash for their time and don't look all that good 15 years later, but to be fair, it's more about the layouts of the maps themselves than their aesthetic appeal. A lot of work and effort has gone into making each map unique visually, but also making sure it has a cohesive layout, and whilst not every map is perfect, the vast majority of them are well executed. We should probably talk about the weapons as well, which have been pretty much held across the entire series of games, and most of which are taken from the first game. On the lower end of things, you've got your basic pistol to start with, then the bi-rifle, which shoots out those blobs of toxic crap. The shock rifle is like a toned down railgun, and the pulse gun is a pretty standard projectile based automatic weapon. Moving on to the more effective weapons, you've got the rocket launcher, which is kind of a standard for first person shooters, the minigun, a sniper rifle, and my personal favourite, the flak cannon. The flak cannon is essentially a shotgun firing with a large spread of shrapnel that can take a second or two to connect with a target, forcing you to lead your shots to make it effective. I'd say it's the most brutal weapon in the game when used correctly, and there's a mutator which even lets you limit every player in the match to using it. Lastly, there's a somewhat hidden weapon called the Redeemer, which launches remote rockets, and the two melee weapons, the impact hammer and the chainsaw. When you consider that all of these weapons have alternate fire modes, you begin to understand the depth and amount of options you'll have with gunfights. The rocket launcher, for instance, can shoot out standard rockets or bounce them out like grenades. If you're particularly skilled with weapons, you could chain kills together pretty quickly, especially with a weapon like the flak cannon or the rocket launcher, earning double, multi, or even reaching the much coveted monster kills.
Monster kill.
The weapon you end up using is going to be dependent on the type of mode you're playing and the map itself, and the ideal weapon is always going to be different. I mean, as much as I love the flak cannon, there's instances when it's just not practical. During Domination and Capture the Flag, you also get the Translocator, which fires out this little disc that you can teleport to with the press of the alternate fire key. It's really just a handy way of getting around maps faster, though if you use it when you're holding the flag, it gets dropped when you teleport. I guess as a means to balance it out. It doesn't take all that long before you come to grips with how each weapon works, but it's still a game that has a very high skill ceiling, and even a decade after I first played it, there's things in this game that still kick my ass. Changing game modes mixes things up even more, and you really need to sink some serious hours into each of these modes to truly master them. Now, Unreal Tournament did get compared to Quake 3 a lot for obvious reasons, and I think objectively Unreal Tournament has way more to offer in terms of raw content, but there's still something to enjoy about Quake 3's simplicity. On the surface, they do appear to be very similar games, but when you compare the difficulty modes, the two are really chalk and cheese. All I ever really noticed the difficulty modes affecting in Quake 3 was the reaction times of the bots and their overall accuracy, but in Unreal Tournament, it's an entirely different kettle of fish. I usually play the game on the 4th difficulty mode, and the moment I ever get the balls to crank this up, I'm reminded why I'm only playing on that difficulty. I found the leap from the 3rd to 4th difficulty was just ridiculous. I mean, I went from winning every single match with ease to barely scraping by to victory, and it's even worse going from 4 to 5. The AI in this game is fucking ludicrous on the high difficulties. They slide all over the place like they're wearing roller skates, firing with mathematical precision, and just being able to do things that humans simply cannot. I guess the point I'm trying to make is that they don't screw around. AI was impressive in Unreal, and now in Unreal Tournament, it takes it to a whole new level. Some people say it's human-like, I say it's inhuman-like, and if you want to see just how smart bots in an FPS game can be, then look no further. In fact, I don't think there's ever been AI that's ever compared since, apart from maybe the bots in Unreal Tournament 2004 and Unreal 3, but that's just derivative of what is featured in this game anyway. Needless to say, they're always going to be challenging, and I can't imagine there's many people in the world who are adept at taking these assholes on with the highest difficulty mode, aptly named Godlike. So what's wrong with Unreal Tournament, I suppose you're wondering? Well, not much to be honest, like really anything at all. It excels at what it sets out to do, which is just fill up your spare time as a multiplayer focused shooting game. There's not really a length to it either. I mean, outside of the single player mode, which could take you a few hours at most. Everyone's going to play it in their own way, and everyone is going to have a certain amount of time that it's going to retain their interest. I think collectively when I was younger, I probably spent upwards of 100 hours playing it, and that's something that I seldom do anymore. I'd have to seriously look for things to complain about, and that's something I'm just not going to do. I'll admit that I don't have the same nostalgic association with Unreal as I do with Quake 3 Arena, but I can still recognize and admit that there has never really been any other multiplayer shooter that has been so complete and so near perfect. And it just shows you how vastly different multiplayer games used to be. I mean, the Game of the Year edition comes with 32 maps just for Deathmatch alone. 32 maps, Sunny Jim. I mean, that kind of thing is unheard of nowadays. You don't even get half that across an entire game, and if you do, it's released through season passes over the span of like 6 months. I mean, sure, it's the Game of the Year edition, but that's still all of the content for one price. You didn't have to cough up more dough later down the track to get new maps. If you're a younger gamer and you often wonder why so many people complain about Call of Duty and Battlefield, it's probably because they grew up playing games like Unreal Tournament, and they've seen how greedy the gaming industry has become. After the first Unreal Tournament, Epic Games continued making sequels. We got Unreal Tournament 2003, which was quickly replaced with Unreal Tournament 2004, and eventually followed up with Unreal 3. All of these games are largely just visual updates, adding some new game modes, modifying the weapons with a few new maps and mechanics, though they rely heavily on the groundwork set in Unreal Tournament. They're great games, don't get me wrong, but the original, as they say, is always the best. And Unreal Tournament is really first-person shooting at its absolute finest, and also an example of how different the business model used to be for gaming. And with the release of the new Unreal Tournament imminent, there's never been a better time to go back and check out this masterpiece.